Hello, welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and this is my review of Fury. When the trailer for Fury first dropped, we all heard and maybe even thought awards contender. Now, while I personally think that this definitely should at least be in the conversation, I'm not sure it'll quite get there. But let's go ahead and analyze what this war drama does well. First of all, I'm not really a war movie type of person. It's just not my flavor, not my cup of tea, usually when I go to the movies. And this film had me gripped from beginning to end. It's horrifying to see what soldiers have to go through and have to live through. And then it's even more horrifying to think of the lack of resources that soldiers are given for mental health once they're out of the army. I know we've gotten better, but, to think about these poor soldiers in World War II and what actual soldiers had to go through at that time, and then they didn't have the resources even afterwards to deal and cope with what it is that they had just lived through, is really sad. It does make you want to be even more patriotic and salute the people who fight for our country, whether you agree with war or whether you don't agree with war, whatever your political stances are. I think movies such as this help keep us grounded and help us be reminded that we need to celebrate those who do fight over or cross enemy lines, fight for our freedom, no matter what it is that we believe politically. But apart from just the story of it all and the meaning behind it all, this movie is shot beautifully. The cinematography is wonderful, the direction is great. It just is a very pretty film to look at all around. And I think the writing is exceptional and the actors really deliver. Brad Pitt is basically playing a more realistic version of his character from Inglourious Basterds. He's still that kind of rough and gritty person, but he's much more humanized here, and it's a much more realized character in general. He got a lot of praise for Inglourious Basterds, and I think he deserves even more praise, because he took that character and made it feel more real. Made you sympathize with him, made you feel like he was an actual soldier fighting in World War II. I also was really shocked at how good Shia LaBeouf was in this movie. He had a very understated role, but his role packed so much feeling into it. He was really kind of the emotional center in a lot of the scenes, and he really elevated the material. I was so impressed with Shia LaBeouf. But honestly, he was kind of the main character we focused on, along with Brad Pitt. But Logan Lerman was wonderful in this movie. He was so fantastic. His transformation was really believable. You related to him, you rooted for him. And I personally related to him, because when he was at the beginning of this film, I was like, that would be me. I would be screwed. And that's kind of how he comes in, is wide-eyed and scared. But he pulls it off so well. I just was blown away by his performance. The other two actors that are part of the main troupe are also really great. I don't think they were quite as good as our three kind of marquee stars, but they were also strong, also really brought to the material. All of the acting was done well. I don't think there was really anybody who stood out as just like, oh goodness, like, we couldn't have found anybody else. I thought all the acting was really strong, and they brought these characters to life and made you care about them. Because that's what Fury stands on, is that you follow not the entire U.S. Army, not just one little love story. No, you follow this band of brothers who are trying to fight for their country, stay alive, and do what they feel is right and what's best, and live some sort of honorable life in this destructive place. And that's what's so impactful. And there are just so many emotionally heart-wrenching scenes. Like I said, you're captivated the whole way through. You care about what happens to these characters, you want to know their story, and you want to live through it with them. And like I said, it's just really heart-wrenching. They have some really shock value scenes in here, and those kind of teetered on negative for me, because while I think you want to have the audience experience as closely as possible what it is that people went through in this time, I think some of the stuff that they put in there was really like horror film kind of stuff. And I didn't necessarily agree with that too much, but it did feel real. It did tug at your heart and your stomach, and they didn't shy away from anything. They hit it straight on. These were not glorified soldiers. They were not seen as terrible people. They were well-rounded people. So we didn't get the soldiers are perfect and do no wrong, or soldiers are terrible murderers. We didn't get either of those, and I appreciate the film for making them well-rounded characters, infusing all of that into all of the characters, and showing what it is that war does to people. But the movie, as all movies, was not perfect. I already mentioned one of my negatives is that there was some gory, like, shock and awe factors throughout the film that I was kind of like, okay, well, that's wonderful. I'm sure instances like that happen all the time, but it just seemed out of place when it happened here. They would just throw it in, and it was just so, like, outlandish that you were like, oh, wow, okay, really? Yay. The other thing that really took me out of this movie was the gunfire. So the Germans literally had red beams for bullets that came out of their guns, and the Americans had green beams. And it literally was like, choo choo, choo choo. I thought I was transported into Star Wars. So, by the end of the movie, it did feel like Star Wars meets Inglourious Basterds meets Saving Private Ryan. Like, it was all just a mixture of those movies to me. And I just don't know why that stylistic choice was made. Why are you going to have beams instead of bullets and make that sound? All of the sound editing and sound mixing I thought was pretty bad overall in this movie. All of the weaponry sounded bad. The blasting, the gunfire, and then they had like the blast flare that came out of the tips of the guns when they shot. It was a mess. And I wish that they had stayed in the realism that the movie had established, because that was completely jarring. Just over the top, removes you from the movie. There's also one scene where an injury happens near the end of the film that I'm not going to talk too much about, but I thought the part where the injury happened was realistic, but then afterward, that person kept talking like it was nothing. They seemed almost unfazed by a pretty bad injury, and I thought, I hate when movies do that. It's like, and then they can go ahead and just talk normally for 10 more minutes, and you're like, really? You haven't received any medical help? How are you talking like this? Come on. But overall, 1970s gunshot effects aside, I really enjoyed Fury. This is a movie I think that's going to stay with me for quite some time. I think this is one of Brad Pitt's best acting performances of his entire career. Shia LaBeouf is back on the map. He showed he can act, and Logan Lerman really proved himself here. He showed that he is here to stay. He's not just little Percy Jackson off to the side. I thought it was a powerful movie. I think it's something that everyone should go and see. It's really good. So, definite recommendation from me. Well, that has been my review of Fury. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, go ahead and click like down below, and subscribe to the channel while you're at it so you are always up to date on our latest videos. I love you all so much for your support. Mwah! Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!